Welcome to the most must-hear podcast in history. Welcome to Real Talk. I am your host, Jesse Jones. Let's get this thing started, y'all. Come on. Real Talk's in effect, y'all. Let's start the show. Welcome to the very first episode of Real Talk. I'm here, y'all. I done made it. Ooh, y'all don't understand how many times I done tried to get this thing right so I can get this thing to my liking, but we here now, y'all. We gonna get it running. Let's see how this works. It's gonna be a little rough on this first one. Anybody who's followed me and who's followed my progression knows that that's just kind of how it happens. You know what I'm saying? You get better as you go. This is the very first. So let's see if we can build from here. You know, I'm not working with the Holy Hills Radio Network anymore. Shouts out to them, all my Holy Hills Radio family. I miss y'all. Appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for giving me the opportunity to have done Catch the Fire for so many years. I greatly appreciate it. But now we out here on our own doing Real Talk, y'all. First of all, before we get started, I want to give a couple of quick special shout outs. Special shout out to my boy, Mr. Mike Gibbs, aka Trek. That beat that you heard at the beginning, whether you like it or don't like it, that's me. I love that thing. I love that beat. It feels like me, feels like how this podcast is going to go. Just a little twist and unconventional. My boy, Mike Gibbs, aka Trek, he created and produced that beat. He is one of the baddest young producers out. When he gets to it, the boy is bad. So special shout out to him. Special shout out to my boy Russell Worthy. For those of y'all who saw the logo, he designed our logo. So he is the mastermind behind the Real Talk logo. And so I appreciate him for doing what he does, for everything he does for High Praise Ministries, and now for what he's doing for Real Talk. I greatly appreciate him. And I could not give special shout outs without giving a special shout out to one of my executive producers. She don't even know she's an executive producer, but she's right now an executive producer. She is my wife, the Queen, Philonda Jones. That's how this thing gonna work, y'all. This is what we gonna do. It is all about family. It's all about Real Talk. It's all about making sure that we are trying to produce and put on the best podcast we possibly can for everybody who wants to hear. So what is Real Talk? Before we get into everything we want to get into, just want to give you a quick overview of what Real Talk is going to be about. Real Talk, well, the full name is HPM Presents Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk, the Real Talk podcast. The Real Talk podcast is going to be a frank, real, raw conversation and discussion about any and everything designed to help people live life in a complete fashion given from an unconventional, godly perspective. No topic is off limits, no conversation too far out there that it can't be discussed. We're going to get into it. We're going to get deep into it. We're going to hit some stuff that a lot of church folk won't hit. We're going to hit some stuff that, isn't necessarily churchy or spiritual or anything, because it's not just a church-based or spiritual-based podcast. This is a podcast for everybody. So we're going to hit some of everything. We're going to hit some controversial stuff. We're going to hit some fun stuff. I promise y'all, on one of these episodes, I'm going to wind up talking a little bit about wrestling, so y'all better get prepared for it. Me and my wife, when she comes on, decides to do some episodes, some special guesting, and hopefully I can talk her into doing some co-hosting. We're going to talk about some movies and love and relationships and Jesus and all kinds of stuff. We're going to hit as much stuff as we possibly can. And I have an email address as well for you all that you all can hit up and email me to suggest any of your topics or anything that you would like to hear is going to be our email bag. You can even submit questions, and depending on the question, it may not fit a full topic, but I may just read your question over the air and answer it that way. We never know. So the email address, and trust me, I'll get better at this as I go. I got to get my flow. But the email address where you'll be able to email Real Talk is at realtalkhpm@gmail.com. That's realtalkhpm@gmail.com. That's going to be our email address. We also have a Facebook page now. All you have to do is search Real Talk, or I think all you have to do is search Real Talk on Facebook, and you'll find our brand new Facebook page. I'm going to use that as a forum for discussion as well. The podcast will also be posted on the Real Talk Facebook page as well. If you want to try to catch up that way, or if you want to go into the archives, this thing is going to be available where all podcasts are available. We're going to be available at Google. We're going to be available on Apple. We're going to be available on Spotify. But I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for those of y'all who know me anyway to be able to access this Real Talk podcast as well. Do me a favor. I'm getting all this out the way now so I don't forget, because my mind is racing, y'all. My mind is racing. Do me a favor. At the end of this podcast, no matter where you have listened to this podcast, if there's an ability to rate this podcast, please give it a 5-star rating. If you don't think it's a 5-star, don't rate it at all, or rate it a 5-star anyway. Those are your two options. I really don't want to see any other ratings other than 5 stars or no rating. Like, your rating helps build the popularity of your podcast. It helps expand the reach of your podcast. So I'm looking for 5 stars across the board. If you don't think the podcast is a 5-star, I get it. Email me and let me know what I can do better, but just don't rate the podcast. Also, where there are opportunities on the podcast to comment on the podcast as well, hit me with some positive comments. Hit me with the love where the public can see. Give me the criticism where only I can see. That way I can build in private and be exposed in public. So when people hear the podcast, when people see what's going on, you feel me? They're able to see a more polished product as I'm polishing it. Is that cool? Hopefully that's cool. All right, so what we're going to do today. For my very first episode, I had to make sure I was going to be comfortable, because I got to try to do this in a couple of different ways that's a little more unconventional for me. For the most part, until I'm told otherwise anyway. The podcast is primarily going to consist of me. I intend on doing some interviews later on down the road. Anchor is a wonderful application, and it allows me the ability to even do interviews even through the phone, and it still be kind of a crystal clear sound. So some interviews are going to be planned for down the road. My wife hopefully is going to be joining me on a couple of episodes, or maybe she may even decide to permanently co-host. I don't know what she's going to decide. I told her it's up to her. Real Talk is my baby. I've been nursing this thing for quite a long time, and I just want to go ahead and do it. If she doesn't want to do it, I'm not going to make her. She does so much for High Praise Ministry. She does so much for me that just to add one more thing onto her plate, I wasn't going to force her to do so. She has an option. I know a lot of y'all like, oh man, I want to hear the Queen. Well, email me at realtalkhpm@gmail.com and let me know, and I'll do my best to kind of nudge her on a couple more episodes. You know what I'm saying? But for right now, this first episode, this is going to be just me. And so I had to make sure I was going to be comfortable, y'all, because I want to try to be as me as I possibly can. And there's a topic in particular that I wanted to talk about, but I can't talk about just yet. I'm not going to be able to get to it probably till middle of June. It's a topic that is hot right now, so I know I'm going to be a little late talking about it, but I want to do it right. I got to do it justice, and I got to do it right, and so I got to make sure that all my I's are dotted, my T's are crossed, and all those things to be able to do it. I ain't going to tell y'all what it is yet, but it's some hot controversy, and for those of y'all who are spiritual people, the church is very silent on this issue, and I'm not happy about it. I'm going to talk very frankly, as I possibly can, to every and anything we deal with, starting with today's overall theme. Our overall theme today is going to be about purpose, and it's going to be about love. I did a call out to some of my friends, some people who know me. First, I did a call, let me be honest with y'all, because this is real talk. So I get to do me however I want to do me. I did a Facebook post first to everybody who was a Facebook friend of mine. I even hit up some groups and whatnot that I'm in. asking them, email me with some topical suggestions. Nobody did it. So I had to do a special call out to some of my friends, to some people that I knew would respond. I did a special call out, text them in particular, and asked them to email me, and they did. And a lot of the topics that came back either dealt with love, relationships, or purpose. Like there were some churchy topics, and we're gonna do that too. But I didn't want to start off this opening episode by being heavy-handed spiritual, only because that's not in totality what this podcast is going to be about. I want to be me. And with Jesse, you get spiritual and you get natural, but you always get real raw. Those who know me know I'm real raw. That's even why the ministry that I'm under, that I pastor, High Praise Ministries, is called the Real Raw Church of Purpose, because I'm all about being real, being raw, being transparent, being honest. I like to dig into things and deal with things most people don't like to do. So let's go on ahead and get this thing started, shall we? So one of the first topics within love and purpose, actually, let me backtrack. Let me define. Let's do that. I want to define purpose and define love real quick so we can be on common ground as to what I'm dealing with and why I'm responding the way I'm responding. Purpose I define as the thing that you do the best with the least amount of effort. Purpose is a thing that you do the absolute best with the least amount of effort. And over the last few years, I've started to add to that definition. And one of the things I've added to that definition is your purpose. It literally defines you. Purpose is that thing that if it was taken away from you, if you could never do it again, it would change who you are. I'm a teacher by nature. I'm a preacher. I'm a teacher by nature. It's the thing that comes out of me even when I ain't trying to have it come out of me. When I'm not trying to be quote unquote churchy, when I'm not trying to be quote unquote deep and spiritual, whatever, it comes out of me. Most of my jokes, for those who know me, I twist jokes and make them Jesus jokes sometimes. I can make some other kind of jokes for those who know me for real as well. But I make Jesus jokes all the time. I got church type conversation. It's just part of who I am. I can't help it. It just comes out of me. And that's one of the reasons why I know I'm in my purpose. I'm moving according to what I'm called to do and what I'm supposed to do. And that's what purpose really is. Your purpose is that thing that's going to define you. Now, love was a little harder because there's so many different ways I could go with defining love. I could go the churchy way and talk Bible and talk about how God is love, or I could go to 1 Corinthians 13 and read all of those things that the Bible says that love is, or I could go off of how I feel about love. But what I decided to do is I decided for consistency's sake and for a standard sake for this particular type of topic and conversation, I wanted to define love according to dictionary.com. Dictionary.com defines love as an intense emotion of affection, warmth, fondness, and regard to another person. Once again, it's an intense emotion of affection, warmth, fondness, and regard to a person. So when you're dealing with love, it is something that is just got such a hold to you, that is so strong within you, that you can't help but to be drawn to it. You can't help but to put everything into it. When you love somebody, they have your attention, they have your heart, they have your concentration. It's hard to think without them. It's hard to sleep without them. When you love somebody, they're a part of your conversation and you want them a part of your life. So with those two things in mind, let's start dealing with some things I want to talk about. And one of the topics that came to me through the email was about being unequally yoked. Now, for those who are not church people who are listening to this podcast, and I appreciate you listening, they may have never heard the term unequally yoked. Well, the Bible says, don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. That's kind of the full verse. I didn't take the time to look it up because I really didn't feel like looking it up. I'm just going to be honest with you. I ain't going to lie to y'all. I know the scripture, I just don't know where it's at and where to find it. That's what Google is for, and that's what my concordance is for. I just didn't take the time to look it up right now. But the Bible says, you can look it up for yourself. The Bible says, don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Well, the question essentially was, so we talk about not being unequally yoked. So let's first define, what does that mean? Being unequally yoked is an unbalance in your relationship. That's the bare bones basics of what it is. You are unbalanced. Your relationship is unbalanced. Your the things about the way you go is unbalanced. You think one thing, they think another. You want to do one thing, they want this. Unbalanced. There's not a whole lot of seeing eye to eye. And Christians especially, we use that scripture to talk about how not to deal with the world. We shouldn't establish the romantic kinds of relationships with the world. That's just not something that we ought to be doing. We ought to have Christian relationships with Christians, and Christians should breed with Christians, and blah, 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 blah. That's what we say. And so when we're dealing with being unequally yoked in the church world, it is simply trying to make sure that the person that you're with is saved. But the question that came through this email was an interesting one. And I'm going to expand it in just a second. But the question that came was, what happens when the person that you're with is spiritual, but they don't like going to church? How do you deal with that in your relationship? Or should you even deal with that in your relationship? And since this is real talk and I get to be me and express exactly how I feel about a situation or a topic and be as free as I want to be, let's just go on ahead and be free. First and foremost, if this cat, this dude, this female is saying they're spiritual, but they don't go to church, I don't know what spirit they're dealing with. I know a whole lot of folk be like, I don't like going to church. I don't need to go to church. I can be saved and not go to church, or God don't have to reside in no church, or why do I have to go to church? And church is full of hypocrites and full of people doing all kinds of stuff. They say they love the Lord, but they do all kinds of other stuff. And that has always bugged me in itself, because we don't say that about hospitals. We don't say I don't go to hospitals because there's all kinds of sick people there. All kinds of people with diseases and people who need help. I don't go to the hospitals because that's where the people who need help are at. Well, the church is where people need help. So you should see all kinds of manner of stupid stuff, even from the leadership. I'm sorry, it is true. Leadership is just as human as you. Pastors are just as human as you. They make mistakes. Yes, they should be held to a higher standard, but not an impossible standard of perfection. So when you go to church, you're going to deal with hurting, messed up, jacked up people who need help just like you. So I don't understand this whole I'm spiritual but I don't go to church, because it makes me wonder what spirit you of. What spirit are you serving? What spirit are you talking about? Surely in a relationship, when you truly have a real relationship, you want that person to be a part of every aspect of your life. You want your significant other to always be in your life, or at least to have access to your life. You want them to know about you, be about you. You want to share your environment and your world with them and be a part of their world as well. Well, spirituality is the same thing. How can you say that you are spiritual and you don't ever want to go to God's house, His environment? I know God is everywhere and God does everything, and He everywhere. He could be in your job and your home and all that other stuff, but He has a place He has designated as His house. Why don't you ever want to go into His environment? Why don't you ever want to go around His friends? Yeah, some of His friends is crazy, like some of your friends is crazy. Why don't you ever want to be around His crazy folk? He's always around your crazy and your crazy folk. So I don't really get that, but how can you maintain a relationship where one person goes to church, the other one says, I'm spiritual, but I don't like going to church? Well, my other question, aside from I don't understand what spirit they say they're serving, here's the other question I have, which would be, so how are you growing? How are you understanding the word of God? How are you hearing what it is that God would have to say? How are you learning these kinds of things? And if you tell me you're reading the Bible and that like pastors read the Bible or whatever, I would say to you, you are on a fool's errand. Because here's the reality of the situation. If I give you a calculus book, and people who've gone to high praise ministries, they've heard me use this example time and again. If I give you a calculus book, I'm certain if you have been somewhat educated in your life, you can take that calculus book, you can read it and understand some of the formulas, understand some of the processes, understand some of the things that you need to understand, some of the theorems, some of the equations. You can understand them. You can even apply them successfully. But the entire calculus book is not going to be in your wheelhouse because you haven't gone to somebody who has studied this thing. This is their life and their job description, to study and to know a calculus book and to know calculus. You haven't gone to somebody and allowed them to teach you what they have learned, what they have studied. You take the time and read the calculus book when you can. They do it all the time. Same thing with pastors. Our job as pastors is to be in our word. Even if we have a regular 9-to-5 job, we're supposed to be in our word. We're supposed to be in the face of God. We're supposed to be reading and studying our word to a higher degree and a different level than what regular people are. So that when we begin to teach from the word, we're not teaching from a place of the same level of understanding you are. So if you are spiritual, how are you getting your growth and your knowledge when you're not on the same level as a teacher? So now you both are unequally yoked because one person's getting an education and the other person's not. I like this analogy, just hit my head. One person's getting their education, one person's getting a diploma, the other person's getting their GED. Now, it's no knock to anybody who got their GED. My daddy got his GED, so I'm not knocking people with a GED. But what I am saying is that the same level of insight, understanding, and educational understanding, educational comprehension does not reside in most people who have a GED as opposed to most people who have gotten their high school diploma and their college degree. It just doesn't equate. Because with your GED, you are cramming a bunch of years of study into a short time frame. Whereas a person who's gone through the process to get their diploma and their degree, they've gone through years of training, years of teaching, years of instruction to get what they got. So you become unequally yoked in that way. But the essence of being unequally yoked means I don't believe what you believe. This isn't just for churchy people. This is why now I can tie in and bring in everybody who ain't churchy. When you're unequally yoked, it boils down to, I don't believe what you believe. You have a dream. You have a vision. You want to get somewhere. You have some goals you want to achieve in life. I don't think you can do it. Or I ain't with that. Well, then why are we together? What that's like is being in a car. I don't know if anybody has ever done the student driving thing, right? But the student is behind the main wheel, where you would be sitting if you were actually driving. But the professor, the teacher, the trainer is in the passenger seat with an overriding steering wheel. If I'm driving and someone else is a teacher or someone else is driving with me and they have access to a wheel and I want to go left and they want to go right, we ain't going to make it nowhere because we're always going to be constantly at odds. So how do you deal with somebody who's unequally yoked? Listen, real talk, I don't think you need to be with them. Even if they say they're spiritual. They say they're spiritual, you need to be spiritual. If you say you going to church, they need to go to church. If neither one of y'all if one of y'all don't want to go to church, then maybe both of y'all don't go to church. I would advise y'all going, but in order to be yoked together, to believe the same thing, a house divided cannot stand. And if you're going and I'm not, you are quote unquote religious and I'm quote unquote spiritual, there's going to be some rifts and it's going to be hard to overcome. And it most likely won't work. There are occasions, there are some outliers that have worked, but on the real, most of it ain't gonna work. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's worth the trouble. Somebody needs to come over to the other side. Either the church person need to go over to the spiritual, we ain't going to the church side, or the spiritual person who going over to who don't go to church needs to come on over to the church side. And in essence, really, that's what love is anyway. Love is about the sacrifice. Let's meet in the middle. Maybe I, as a church person, don't go to so much church so that you who are quote unquote spiritual don't have to endure as much church. But some kind of way, our love should cause a sacrifice so that we can meet in the middle. But if that can't happen and you just on your side of the spectrum, I'm on my side of the spectrum, well, y'all be on y'all side of the spectrum, but don't be together. You causing a headache for each other and probably for all your friends who got to hear y'all bellyache and moan about everything. So that's my take on that. I hope to the person who has emailed that in, I hope some of that made sense. If not, email me and we'll talk about it some more, maybe on the next broadcast or down the line, or maybe I just may email you back and we converse about it and see what's going on and see how I can more directly and effectively have some real talk with you. The second conversation that took place, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this one before I go to my first break, before I go to my break. I only have one break today. This one's a conversation that was really near and dear to me because I've been through it. So it's basically dealing with relationships, getting into a relationship after divorce or after you've had a long-term relationship. How do you do that? How does that happen? What goes on in that? So for those who don't know anything about me, who may have just stumbled upon this podcast and are still listening, or a friend recommended it, or maybe you saw it on Facebook and decided to jump in, or whatever the case may be. I've been married before. My current wife is not my quote-unquote first wife. So that means I've been divorced. And getting into a relationship after divorce, dealing with that is not easy. As a matter of fact, in a relationship is probably one of the hardest things to do. Because if that long-term relationship or that divorce has taken place, there's a whole lot of heartbreak and a whole lot of heartache that's associated with it. You got a whole lot of issue that's probably going on with that relationship. So how do I deal? What do I do? The first question that popped into mind to try to help deal with this topic is how do you get into a relationship after it? And in reality, I probably should have said that, you got to take time to heal, and everybody does all that. Take time to heal, take time to recover. But of course I can be. I'm so used to, in other settings, asking for permission to be honest. But this is my podcast. I'm allowed to be honest. Hence the name Real Talk. I don't think you always have to take the time off from the relationship, or from getting into another relationship. There are some wounds. There are some scars. There is some hurt that you can't handle by yourself. So let me make this practical. Let's go back to kind of a hospital kind of a theme for a second. I broke my leg a couple of months ago. There's no way I could have this healed properly by myself. My broke leg is different than a cut on my arm or a skinned knee. A skinned knee or a small cut on my arm or a headache or even the common cold, I can take care of that by myself. I can clean the wound out, or clean the skin off, or take a Excedrin or a NyQuil or something, or get some rest or whatever is necessary for my body to be able to heal itself and do what it needs to do. But when breaking my ankle, I needed doctors. I currently need my physical therapist. I currently need these people to help me heal properly. I needed somebody to put a cast on my ankle because I couldn't do it myself. Even if I had the training to do it, I still couldn't do it myself. I needed help with when I was walking on my crutches with the cast. I needed help with certain things. I just needed help. I couldn't do it alone. When I graduated from the cast to the boot, I still couldn't do certain things on my own. I still needed some help. Now that I'm walking on a cane, I'm a lot better. I'm a lot more independent once again, but I still have to take my time with some things. And since I'm still going to physical therapy, that means I still need some help. So some of these scars, some of these wounds, some of these hurts that have happened in relationships, you can't help on your own. I know what we talk about. I know what people tell people. I even know what therapists say to people. I get it. You gotta heal first. You gotta get over the scars. You gotta spend some time with you and do those things. And I'm not saying don't do them. But what I am saying is, in totality, some scars are just so deep you can't heal them yourself. You need someone else to be around you to help you, to help heal you, to help bring you to full strength, to help put you in a situation where you can learn how to be happy again. You can learn how to be yourself again. And so that's why my first step wasn't take time off. My first thing that I want to deal with was how does one get into a relationship? Well, the first thing you got to do is you have to trust yourself to put yourself back out there. And that's hard. It's much harder than what people think. You have relationship PTSD. Everything that somebody does becomes a trigger. It reminds you of what happened in this other relationship. And oh my God, don't let certain smells happen, especially if you're a dude. As a man, certain smells at the time reminded me of my ex-wife. My ex-wife wore a particular kind of hairspray. Every time I would smell it, it reminds me of her. When I would see it going in and out of Kroger, because that's where she would get it from, it would remind me of her. It took a while for that to fade. But with the memory of her came all of the good and all of the bad. And what we react to is almost always the bad. So it is a lot harder to put yourself out there, but you have to put yourself out there. My advice in terms of putting yourself out there, get a close friend of the opposite sex and take them out somewhere. Real talk. You can trust them. It's not going to be anything weird and awkward because you're not really trying to date them like that, but somebody where just you and them can go out and you can get comfortable again in those kinds of settings with someone of the opposite sex. Get comfortable. Get comfortable in the conversation again. Get comfortable without the triggers. Get comfortable without the PTSD jumping up. So put yourself out there, but do it step by step. Take some time to deal with someone else of the opposite sex that you trust, that's already in your circle. You gotta put yourself back out there because you can't ever get into another relationship if you don't put yourself back out there. The worldly holy cliche, and yes, holy cliche. There's a holy cliche out there that says the best way to get over a man is to get under another one. The best way to get over a woman is to get under another one. I ain't saying that, but what I am saying is one of the best ways to try to get over someone is also to put yourself back out there and allow yourself to enjoy the company, the conversation of someone else. Even if it's not something that is going to try to turn into a relationship, just in order to be comfortable again, just trying to be you again. Because when you're in a marriage and when you are in a long-term relationship, but especially a marriage, you lose a part of yourself. It's inevitable. There's some things about you that are just going to die. And when the relationship itself dies, you got to figure out how to be you again. Because you didn't bury this part. But that part was a part of you. And what made up the void of that part being dead is the joining of your portion to their portion, and y'all became a portion. Well, when that portion is gone, you got that void back again, and now you have to relearn how to be you. I don't know if you've ever talked to somebody who ain't dated in a while, but dating, they always say is just crazy now. If you ain't dated in 15 years, wow. The things you have to learn again, things you have to do again, the things you have to see again, you got to learn some stuff. You got to deal with some stuff. And those things are not easy. And so you got to put yourself back out there. You have to allow someone to help you through that process. I know it's unconventional, but everybody who knows me knows I'm an unconventional person. It's just who I am. I highly recommend going on. I wish I had done that myself. I wish I had had the understanding now that I had then. My wife now helped me so much more than she even knows get over my ex-wife. Things I would have never been able to get over by myself, she helped me get over because she was there. Just what it was. She was there. She was somebody I could talk to and text, and I could call, and I could go out on a date with or see or whatever. She was there. And it's probably going to sound horrible to people who just trying to take it a whole nother way. She became my distraction until my distraction became the result of my attention. I no longer needed to focus on or could focus on all the hardship and all the hurt and the pain and all that stuff. I couldn't focus on that anymore because I had this person distracting me from the fact I was hurting. She was my anesthetic in surgery. She was my sleeping whatever that stuff that they used to put you to sleep. She was that for me before going under surgery. And so by the time I came back to, I was healed. I was good. But it's because she was there. I had somebody who I put myself out there to, and they received me, and I was able to deal with them and them deal with me, and it just started to heal. And it didn't happen overnight, but I promise you it was much easier than what I was doing before. So you got to put yourself out there. Now, the other question that comes from that is, how do I know I'm ready? That pause for the that y'all keep hearing is me taking a swig of my juice because I'm getting a little cotton mouth because I talk. But how do I know I'm ready? Well, that's different for different people. There's really no concrete way of saying I'm ready, or if you follow these steps, you'll be ready, right? So you just have to know yourself, you have to watch yourself, and you have to take a chance. Like, at the end of the day, you kind of have to take a chance on it. Step out, you see yourself getting kind of skittish, oh, it must not be ready. Let me go back and work on some other things. But ultimately, the telltale sign, I can't give you the telltale steps, but one of the telltale signs that you are ready, that you're ready to go back into another relationship or you're ready to try this thing again, is when the thought of the person that you have lost no longer affects you like it once did. You are no longer up crying yourself to sleep at night. You're no longer boo-hooing at love songs. You're no longer freaking out at your anniversary date. You're starting to feel yourself come back to being you. When those things begin to happen, you're ready. You're really ready to give it another try. But it's different for different people. It really, really is. For some people, it goes quicker. For some people, it goes slower. And I really hate the ideology that has been passed around that just because you're able to get into another relationship quicker, it means you really didn't care. That's not true. Maybe I have gone through the process before and I understand how to go through the process. So it's a little easier for me, or it's a little quicker for me, or what have you. I know how to roll with the punches a little better. I've been going to physical therapy for 3 months now. They give me and have given me for the past 3 months the same 4 starting exercises to begin my day there. Same 4 every time I walk through the door. I got to get on the bike. I got to do these balance steps. I got to walk up and down the step front ways, and I got to walk up and down the step sideways. After that, they throw some other things in. So now when I come into physical therapy, once I say hi to my therapist, I just start working. Once I get through the 4th exercise, then I go to my physical therapist and say, okay, what's up? What's next? And she'll watch my progress. She'll watch me from a distance as she does some of the other things she has to do. But because I understand what to do now, I just do that until I come to a place of I don't know what I'm doing next. That's sometimes relationships. When you have been in them enough and you have gone through hurt enough and you've had to overcome hurt enough, you kind of understand what you need to do in order to get better. So I may be quicker at it than what I once was before. Doesn't mean I didn't care anymore. It may just simply mean I know how to recover a little better than what I did before. But I recognize who I am enough to recognize I'm ready when I start to see and feel myself become me again. When I'm able to just be me. The hardest thing about divorce, the hardest thing about losing a long-term relationship, I promise you, at least from my perspective, is being you again. Remembering how in the heck do I be me? A lot of people like to talk about the getting into the relationship. It's hard to talk about what happens when it's over. What do you do? How do you act? How are you supposed to become you? I've been in this thing for a while. We was married. We was together for 6 years. We were married for 4 years, together a total of 6 years. 6 years is a long time. It's a small amount of time, but it's a long time. It's a really long time to be a union with someone, for lack of a better way to put it. If it takes 21 days to produce a habit, how many 21 days you think are in 6 years? 6 years of knowing and growing and being and understanding. 6 years? That's a long time. So now all of a sudden it's done, it's over. I ain't got to do that no more. What am I supposed to do? Which goes into the next thing I want to deal with it before we hit the break. When you are trying to recognize that you're ready to get back out there, some of the pitfalls you have to watch out for, or the biggest pitfall, I'll just deal with the biggest pitfall for right now. The biggest pitfall you have to watch out for is making sure that you don't treat them like the last. I heard this in a movie. I can't remember the movie I heard it in, but I like the cliche. It said this: no man wants to pay for the sins of another man. No woman wants to pay for the sins of another woman. I didn't hurt you. Why are you taking your hurt out on me? Biggest pitfall, and it's one of the hardest things to recognize that you're doing. So one of the ways to try to curb that is to empower your mate, empower the person you're with, and say, listen, I was in this relationship for a long time. I may unknowingly treat you like them. When you recognize it, tell me so that I can see it and adjust accordingly. Because some things are small. So it may not even be necessarily the hurt aspect. Some things are small things that you don't even recognize you doing. You don't even recognize that sometimes, hey, look, you may not, she may not like me opening doors, so I ain't gonna open doors for you, but you like me opening doors, and every time you ask me to open a door, I get mad because I ain't supposed to be opening no doors. Well, I ain't her. She didn't like the door being open. I did. She may have cooked for me. You don't. Well, I wasn't cooking when we first started dating. What makes you think I'm gonna start cooking now? Like you have to learn that new person just like you learned that old person. And you have to do it with a clean slate. They are not that person. And we hear that time and again as a very old-timey type cliche or old-timey type statement. But it was very hard to do. Like, I don't even know if Philanda recognizes how much the first month and a half or so I was struggling with that, trying not to treat her like my ex. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things I had to remind myself she ain't her. A lot of things that she did that reminded me of her, but the intention wasn't the same. The action may have been similar, but the intention wasn't the same. And I had to make sure I wasn't dealing with her like my ex because the action was familiar. I had to look at it as this is a whole different person and their intentionality in doing what they're doing is different. And so I have to address the intentionality of this person, not my ex. And so you have to be comfortable doing that. You have to be comfortable expressing your triggers and be comfortable with them expressing they're not that person. And you learning and growing together with it, because being a part of a team for so long, and then for lack of a better way to put it, being traded to another team where everything is different, is hard. It's hard. It's hard in any other aspect of life. You know how hard it is to be at a job for 10 years and then go to another job and not fall into the pattern of doing things at the new job like you did them at the old job? You ever move to another apartment, another house, and at night you got to get up and go to the bathroom, and because you knew your old apartment, you wouldn't turn the light on? And you knew just the route to go to get to that bathroom, but now you're in the new place and you didn't turn the light on, and now you're falling over stuff and stubbing your toe on stuff? It's because you haven't learned the new apartment yet. You ain't learned the new job yet. Your relationship is the same. Biggest pitfall is not taking the time to learn this new person like you learned the old person, and making sure you don't deal with the new person like you dealt with the old person, because divorce sucks. It just does. Missing out on a long-term relationship sucks. It just does. And so you have to be sure to grow. Address your hurt. I'm going to say this and we're going to go to break, because I've been talking a little bit too long. I talked a little over the break time that I wanted to go. You have to allow yourself the grace to say I'm hurting and be okay with it. Especially men. We don't like to acknowledge our hurt, our pain, our issues. We don't really like to acknowledge them. And if we take the time to acknowledge them, we can then get help with them. Took me a long time, and I'm gonna be honest with y'all, some things I still don't acknowledge my hurt in, and I'm trying to learn to do better. I really, really am. This last year has been a very eye-opening experience about Jesse for Jesse, and learning the things that I really am hurting about. and then being confronted with those things I'm really hurting about, so that I have to get better. And I encourage you to do the same in your relationships, in your life. Acknowledge your hurt so that you can get better. Cool. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back with one more topic. I was going to do two, but we're going to just do one more topic before we get out of here. I don't want this first episode to be too long. So we're going to do that, and we're going to be out. Hopefully, this has so far been good. I'm still a little rough, but we're going to make it work. All right, we'll be right back after this break. The Real Talk Podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or your computer. Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll even distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and many, many more. You can easily make your money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. All you have to do is download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. And we're back. So the second half, or this third topic, like I said, we're going to try to do four, but we're a little long. Well, I've been a little long. Can't say we because ain't nobody else here but me. I want to deal with the purpose portion of it. The purpose portion of love and purpose. Well, let's do the second question. I was going to do the first one. Let's do the second one. And maybe I may tie in a little of the first and kind of smash it all together. So the question that came through the email was, does love have to be put on hold for your purpose? And I liked that question. I really did, because it's an uncomfortable one. Trying to find the balance between your love and your purpose. Women deal with this all the time. Do I commit myself to my career? And if I commit myself to my career, does that mean I have to put a family on hold and put a husband or a relationship on hold? Or do I pursue this relationship and this family and put my career and my dreams on hold? And here's the truth. The truest truth that anybody without an agenda will tell you. The answer is yes. Sometimes you do have to put one or the other on hold. They don't always and can't always coexist at the same time. It is hard to be the CEO of a growing company and trying to start a family. It is hard to be an actor or an actress or an athlete in the middle of their season and date. It is hard trying to pastor and build a ministry and maintain your marriage. The statistics for pastors and failed marriages is astounding. And that's because, yes, I know what some folks say, that's because they ain't got no balance, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, there's no balance, but the reality is sometimes one or the other has to be put on hold, and both parties have to be comfortable with the hold that may have to be put on. Sometimes for a season, your purpose has to come first. Sometimes for a season, your love has to come first. And then as they balance out, you can then do them both together. But there does come a time, especially in the beginning, where you got to choose one or the other. One may have to be put on hold for a little bit. You trying to start a business, you know how hard date night would be when you're trying to start a business? You know how hard trying to start a business would be when you just getting married, trying to solidify your marriage? That's hard. So yes, uncomfortably. Real talk. Sometimes you got to put one on hold for the other. Let me go ahead and be biblical, because I ain't been biblical in a while in this podcast. The Bible says, to everything there is a season, a time, and a place for everything under the sun. Everything. Your purpose is under the sun. Your relationship is under the sun. So there's a time and a season for it. One of the things that has to be done, yes, is balance and maintaining that balance. And most people look at, when they think of that kind of balance, they think, okay, when you're at work, you're at work. And when you're at home, you be at home. Don't bring your work home, and don't bring your home to work. And that, I get that. But sometimes it's not a day-to-day kind of balance you need. Sometimes it's a season-to-season balance. And so you have to be able to communicate with your spouse. Hey, look, for the next 2 months, I'm all in on this. I'm all in on this. I need you to be all in with this, on this with me. But if you can't, I need to be all in on this. And then you have to have a conversation with yourself. Look, all right, for the next 2 or 3 months, look, we're going to put this other stuff on the back burner, and it's all about me and my relationship. We're going to do this love thing, and we're going to try to build this and try to work this and try to grow this. Because both things that you're trying to grow, they need attention. Both things you're trying to do and pursue, they need attention. And so you have to be able to give attention to both in a manner that helps both grow. Period. And so it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to be a single mom and try to deal with a relationship. It's hard. Some single mothers make the sacrifice and say, look, I guess I'm not going to date until my child is X age. Some single mothers do that. And they do that because they understand, I can't do both at the same time right now. I don't have the ability or the luxury or the resource or whatever it takes to do it. So I may have to put one on hold. My love life may have to be put on hold so my child can grow. It's all about the balance of it. Sometimes you have to uncomfortably put something on hold. My advice is, if you're trying to pursue your purpose and trying to pursue and grow a relationship, that you have open, honest, raw communication with each other. Hey, look, this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to do. I need some time to build this. I need some time to grow this. I need your support in this. But I'm not going to allow it to be long. I will not allow you to be put on the back burner and feel like second place, or feel like you are second to this thing I'm trying to do. I can't do this without you, but this has to get the attention. Or sometimes you just have to understand that right now I can't pursue this right now because I have to deal with my relationship. Let me give you a practical example. I wasn't going to give it, but I'm going to give it because it's in my mind to give, so I'm going to give it. Some folk will get it, some folk won't. For when me and my wife, we started dating, I was at a church. And, yeah. I had been there for a while before she got there. Came to a point where I started recognizing she wasn't growing. I was comfortable there. And she said some things to me that pricked my spirit. Pissed me off first, and then it pricked my spirit. But I took heed to what she said. And I prayed about it, but I took heed to what she said, and it caused me to understand I need to be able to move. I have to move. I got to move. Because what I'm trying to build with her won't grow while we're here. So let's move. And it just happened to be the fact that what she was telling me to do was also to grow my purpose. Because my purpose wasn't going to grow where we were at, but I had to hear her. And then when we got to where our covering church is now, I had to hear her again. There were some things that after a while she got frustrated with, and she wasn't growing, and she wasn't moving in the way that she wanted to move. And so we had a conversation. I said, but baby, go ahead and sit down. Take some time off from this stuff. Balance. We wound up all the time that we were at our covering church and doing high praise ministries, along with being a part of a very intricate part of my covering church. We wound up taking the month of July off every year, so that we could try to establish something with each other and build something with each other and just have some us time. That's the kind of balance I'm talking about. You have to be able to make that kind of balance. I have to sacrifice my time. I have to sacrifice this, or I have to sacrifice that. But sometimes you're not going to be able to do both. So when is the time that I'm supposed to move in my purpose? Well, you move in your purpose when it's time. It sounds like a cop-out kind of an answer, but when it's time. And oftentimes, when you're talking about the balance of it, you can decide the time. This is a good season to do this purpose thing. We got to move in this purpose, and this is a good time. This is a good season that I need to slow down on this and work on my relationship and work on my marriage. You have to know these things. You have to be aware of what's going on. If you're just talking about just pursuing your purpose, how do I know when it's time to pursue my purpose? Well, balance your teaching and training and preparation, and balance that opposed to procrastination. You have to understand the difference between preparation and procrastination. I'm not going to not move in my purpose after I've been trained for 20 years. At some point, you got to piss or get out the pot. But at the same time, I can't just jump out there after being trained for 3 days either. I have to learn, I have to grow. I have to see that is there anything more at this stage that I need to learn that may prohibit me from being successful starting. Not prohibit me from being successful operating in it, because you could always learn and grow, whether you're talking church or not, spiritual or not. You can always learn and grow. But have I learned enough to start? Have I learned enough in this relationship to look towards marriage? Have I learned enough in this field to try to start in this field? I have to balance my preparation with procrastination. I cannot afford to procrastinate, but I cannot afford to not be prepared. I cannot afford to not move in my season, but I cannot afford to not establish and grow my relationship. All of these things are balance. They're just balance. And when you move in balance well with the right person, because you can only move in balance well with the right person. When you move in balance well, what you'll find is you almost won't ever be unequally yoked. That's just being honest. That's just real talk. So I hope I've been a help to you in this podcast. This is the first one. I promise you I'm going to get better. I promise you these conversations will get better as well. We're going to go into some other things, some different things, hit some different stuff. I plan on doing a whole lot with this podcast. I really do. So please be patient with me. Please grow and learn with me as I learn and grow as well. But I hope it's been a help to you in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And if this podcast has been a help to you, or you've enjoyed this podcast, I ask that you would do me just one favor. I ask that you would become one of my valued listening sponsors. A listening sponsor is someone who helps contribute monthly to my podcast. The contributions that you will give will allow me to do some greater things with the podcast. First of all, get mics, because I'm doing the podcast from a phone. Get a better sound system together. Allow me to be able to give incentives for my valued listening sponsors, and allow me the ability to do some other things, like I want to do a couple of conventions or conferences if you're churchy. I want to be able to do some things like that. I want to be able to, a lot of things I want to be able to do, and I can't do them on my own. And so I need your help. So if you wouldn't mind becoming a listening sponsor, that's what I'm calling them, listening sponsors, I would greatly appreciate it. You can go to anchor.fm/HPM Real Talk /support. Again, that's anchor.fm /HPM Real Talk /support. Or you can go to the Real Talk Facebook page, and I have the same link on the Use App button. So you can do that either or one of those ways. Those will work. Anchor has it so that there are 3 tiers of listening sponsors. You can contribute 99 cents a month. You can contribute $4.99 a month, or you can contribute $9.99 a month. I don't know why these 99 cents are all the rage. I don't know why we just don't do $1, $5, and $10. But this ain't my stuff. I didn't set that portion up. This is what they do. So it's 99 cents, $4.99, and $9.99. Those are your 3 tiers. And as I grow, I'm going to be able to have different incentives for each of the tiers, as well as you as a listening sponsor altogether. So please, ma'am, please, sir, if you wouldn't mind, become one of my listening sponsors, and I'd greatly appreciate it. Go to anchor.fm/HPM Real Talk /support. This has been your first episode of Real Talk. I am your host, Jesse Jones. I hope that you've had a good time, and do me a favor. Make sure that no matter where you are, no matter what you do one thing and do it well. And that is always, always keep it real. This has been Real Talk. Have a great one.